Hello and welcome to this new edition of The Interview on France 24. My guest today is Andris Piebalgs. He's the EU Commissioner in charge of development. Now, the European Union remains the world's largest aid donor. Last year, it gave up to 53 billion euros to developing countries. But with the EU facing a historic debt crisis, some wonder whether Europe can keep up the pace. Can the EU keep on giving? Well, this is one of the questions I'll put to my guest today. Mr. Piebalgs, welcome to our program.
Thank you for being invited.
Now, before we talk about your budget, we know that all eyes, of course, these days are on the Arab countries with the Arab revolutions, of course. The EU has vowed to assist Arab countries in their democratic transition. What is your top priority? I should say, what is your top worry at this stage?
Well, I think there are a couple of, it's very difficult to divide. I think the most first is political process, because it's been a lot of changes, but elections are crucial. Democracy and human rights situation in the countries should improve day by day, because people went into the street exactly for this reason. So our support for democracy, for human rights are crucial. The second, people would like to get the jobs. I think that is the second worry, because of all the events, economic growth has declined, and a lot of people found it's difficult to feed their families. So I think that is a second big issue that we need to deal with.
But your mission, of course, is to foster sustainable development. I want to ask you, this is a very abstract concept, of course. Where do you start?
Well, I think if we start, we have some experiences. It's north of Africa. We have provided development aid quite a long time. I just could make one example. In 70s, life expectancy in Tunisia was lower than in Congo. And scholarization in Morocco have been lower than in Malawi. Today, it's not comparable situation, partially because we have already provided the biggest aid. But where we start, I think it's very much that we took a lesson from Arab Revolution. I think the most important part is democracy, building of democracy, supporting the democracy, and human rights, particularly role of women, because they have been shift in society. A lot of women participated in the revolution. But this process could not stop abruptly. I think it's important that we accompany this political change through the civil society. Civil society is crucial for any stability in any country.
Now, further down, the situation in the Horn of Africa remains very critical. Tens of thousands of Somalis have already died from lack of food. I know that this is your other big priority these days. What is Europe doing?
Well, we have already supplied the aid just during this year, 175 million euro, just for humanitarian aid. We have also made some steps, as in Somalia, but also in other parts in Africa, where we anticipated the difficulties, where we have invested also quite substantial amount of money. But our difficulty with Somalia was security. You can't provide aid to the people because of Al-Shabaab. So we have supported for some time African peacekeepers, but our biggest worry is now twofold. One is really to get the access in people in need in Al-Shabaab controlled area. The second, the people that are in camps need to be given future quite rapidly. They lost their livestock, and we need to get them back on normal life that they knew before the crisis. So I think it is, we have dealt more or less with humanitarian part, but now it's very much with development issues that we need to deal, and security issues crucial.
You mentioned security issues. There's also, of course, the security of collaborating with local governments. How do you make sure that the aid goes straight to the people in need? In other words, how do you bypass corrupt regimes?
Well, we have schemes, because most of the aid comes through the NGOs that we have worked. We have clearly tested, and there is practically zero level of corruption possibility. When we work through the governments, in some cases, then we have clearly proven by IMF that there is clear public finance management, there is so-called audits, and basically we deliver money only after the job has been done. So basically you pay for the service delivered. So this is not the biggest challenge that we face, but at the same time we know that in these countries corruption is quite endemic. And what we try to encourage countries to fight the corruption, because they clearly face the biggest challenge standing from the corruption for any type of sustainable development.
Another priority, of course, is Haiti. I know that you visited the island following the earthquake almost 2 years ago, which killed 200,000 persons and completely devastated the country's infrastructure. Are we seeing some light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, it was a very direct question. I would say it's still a process because there is democratically elected president. We need now government. If there is a government, you can work much more effective together. We have a lot of programs for shelter, for roads, so it's moving. But the most important thing is really that there is a credible government in place as soon as possible, because otherwise our aid lacks natural partner. And without it, you say, well, what light at the end of the tunnel you can see if there is not credible government and the democratic process does not manifest it, that is a responsible government for using the funds, because what we are building is for people of Haiti, not for ourselves. So the government is crucial.
As we said earlier, the EU remains the world's largest aid donor, 53 billion euros if you add up all the contributions only last year. With the current debt crisis and the economic woes across Europe, are you worried that your budgets will be cut?
Well, yes, I am, sure I am, because when you cut cuts, you regard each area. Even if EU has very much committed to 0.7% of GNI by 2050.
That's the original aid, 0.7, but
exactly.
We're not there yet.
We are not there. We are at 0.43. But the good news, last year, 17 governments of 27 had increased development aid. So they have been overall increase in volumes. But I think it's important really delivers a message to the governments, in particular to the people of the countries, that what we invest in development, it's not charity. It's really investment also for our security, for our, well-being, because if there is a good growth in Africa, definitely we will also support this growth through the jobs creation in Europe. So in a way, we should look on development aid, not as a charity as in previous time, but mostly as a change in the societies. And the societies have changed for the better. In a lot of African countries, there have been decent growth. There is quite a lot of success on MDGs, so we can do much more. But I think we should see it as investment money.
You vowed to save 4 billion euros by managing the aid more effectively. What is it that you want to improve concretely?
Well, the most important is that when we start work with the country, each of us builds our own supply system of aid and development. And we have, 27 pillars plus other countries. But we would like that this building is being much more planned, and that we know if I provide the water pipes, then somebody does something else, so that we don't duplicate each other, that we are not hampering with unnecessary administration difficulties developing country. And just by using this...
So you want to trim bureaucracy, if I understand you?
Not only bureaucracy trimming, that is part of the exercise, but the other part that you achieve much better results when you support government program, and each of you put in the pace your own schemes in place, not just they are going isolated way. So you achieve much better results, or it is in health, or it's education, or immunization.
Aren't you frustrated that, for instance, countries like China or maybe the Gulf states aren't contributing more?
Well, I think for China, it has a lot of poverty also pockets inside the country. I believe that China has made a remarkable progress in addressing poverty, but there is still a lot of challenges. Arab states also has a lot of challenges. So I believe that job creation, particularly in private sector, is absolutely necessary, because these countries has a lot of jobs created by government, and we have seen that it's not very much sustainable. So I would say it's our duty and our privilege to help developing countries, because a lot of them really need support, particularly landlocked, isolated countries like Lesotho, I could mention, or Rwanda, or Ethiopia, because it comes out rather difficult history. So I think we are still, with all the crisis, we are still much better placed to provide the aid, because Europe has also historical links with the countries, rather complicated sometimes. But still, I think it's also a moral obligation because we are one of the richest parts of the world.
And yet critics say that Europe gives a lot, but sometimes lacks visibility and therefore also lacks some room for maneuver. If you compare it with America, for instance, what do you respond?
Well, I think Europe is more advanced in its aid. We don't ask, aid is not provided for us. Aid is provided for others. Visibility is important for our taxpayers, it's true. But the most important is how many lives we save, how many people we feed through our aid. So I think the visibility is a secondary issue after the real efficiency. And efficiency you achieve mostly with transparency. People now have access of our aid programs. They see the results and, well, final beneficiaries. So I think we will improve on visibility. I know that it is a challenge. But we have provided substantial change in the world. You can take Timor-Leste or Bangladesh or Rwanda or Ethiopia. And in all of the countries, EU aid has been substantial.
Andris Piebalgs, EU Commissioner for Development, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with you.
And thank you for watching this edition of The Interview on France 24. Please stay on our channel for more news. From me here in Paris, goodbye.